Erin hurled the sold sign across the yard. "You sold your own son's house?" Dorothy didn't flinch. "Check the deed." Matt looked stunned. Erin looked hunted. The mother-in-law they tried to erase them instead. Locks clicked, movers unloaded. She didn't scream. She signed, and she won. "All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from." The click of the padlock echoed louder than it should have. Dorothy stood at the threshold of the kitchen, still in her robe and slippers, blinking as Erin looped a silver combination lock through the cabinet handles like it was the most natural thing in the world. The refrigerator already had a latch across its double doors, bright red plastic like something meant for a toddler's safety. "For portion control," Erin said cheerfully, spinning the dial like she was setting up a gym locker. "It's not personal." Dorothy smiled, slow and practiced. "Of course." But something in her chest, something warm and woolly, pulled tight like a drawstring. She nodded, turned, and walked back down the hall. In her room, she reached for her notebook. Not the floral one she used for church bulletins. The other one, the black and white marbled one that looked like it belonged to a high schooler. She flipped to a fresh page and wrote, "Day 43. Fridge, locked. Pantry, locked. Explanation. Portion control. Feeling. Not hungry, just small." There were 42 pages just like it, each line a breadcrumb in reverse. The smell of coffee drifted through the air vents. Erin always made a pot after Dorothy was up and dressed, as if caffeine was a reward for performing old age politely. Later that morning, as Matt passed through the hallway with a gym bag slung over his shoulder, Dorothy stopped him. "You okay with the kitchen situation?" she asked, voice even. He paused. His expression was a mask of sun-like concern, but his eyes had already shifted past her, toward his truck, the clock, anywhere else. "It's just a safety thing, Mom." Erin read something about cognitive slips and food hoarding post-surgery. Better to be safe. Dorothy blinked. "You think I'm hoarding?" Matt gave a small chuckle. No, just... We're all adjusting. It's temporary." "Like the guest room?" He didn't answer, just patted her shoulder and left. Dorothy stood in the quiet hallway and watched the door close behind him. Temporary. She remembered a different door slamming, decades ago, after Matt's father stormed out for the last time. She'd locked that one herself, bolted it, pressed her back against it while holding a toddler in one arm and a baby bottle in the other. Back then, she hadn't had time to feel humiliated, only focused. Now there was nothing but time. That night, she opened the drawer in her nightstand and took inventory. 1 granola bar, 3 saltine packets from a diner, 2 hard candies, and a single-serving packet of peanut butter she'd saved from a hospital tray. She added a line to her notebook. Day 43. Night secret stash begun. Strange how survival looks like shame when you're old. The next afternoon, she stepped carefully into the laundry room to do a load. She froze. A chain lock now looped through the cabinet with the detergent and folded towels. Her socks went damp with spilled water near the utility sink. Erin called down the stairs. "Oh, yeah, just trying to keep the toddler out of there. It's dangerous." Dorothy didn't answer. Instead, she walked back upstairs, sat on her bed, and let the sunlight hit her knuckles. She opened her phone's browser and typed, "Can I sell a house I co-own with family?" The search results blinked back. It depends. But yes, in many cases, especially with majority ownership. She bookmarked the page, then hid her phone under a pillow. That evening, Erin left a grocery list on the kitchen counter. It fluttered to the floor when Dorothy passed by with her laundry basket. She bent to pick it up. The handwriting was loopy. Smiley face dots on the eyes. The last line froze her mid-breath. "Our food, not hers. No more oat milk, she's using it up too fast." Dorothy stared at the paper like it had been scrawled in blood. She folded it once, slipped it into her notebook, then added a final note for the day. Day 43, Night 2. The fridge isn't the only thing that's locked. I see that now. Dorothy wasn't trying to eavesdrop. She was walking slowly, carefully, like her physical therapist had shown her, down the hall to check if her laundry cycle had finished. But she froze just before the kitchen archway, unseen but not unheard. Erin was on the phone. Her voice rose and fell in those performative waves people use when they want sympathy more than solutions. "I swear she just stands in the kitchen like a ghost waiting to haunt the fridge," Erin said, laughing. "Honestly, it's like babysitting a toddler with senior discounts." Pause. Then, "No, I'm not being cruel. She eats constantly, cheese slices, crackers, all the oat milk, and now I think she's hiding snacks upstairs." Another pause. "Matt? He's no help, still clings to that single mom guilt, like raising him alone was a favor I should repay." Dorothy turned before she could hear more. Back in her room, she sat on the edge of her bed and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes didn't look haunted. They looked alert, focused, like they always had, especially in the worst moments. She reached into her notebook and scribbled, "Day 44. Heard. Babysitting a toddler with senior discounts. Realized, I'm not hungry for food. I'm starving for respect." That afternoon, she made the short walk down the block to see Mia. Mia lived in the yellow single-story with too many wind chimes and a dog named Percy who never stopped barking, but never got up either. Dorothy hadn't planned on saying much, just a cup of coffee and a little air. But the words tumbled out like loose marbles once she sat on Mia's patio. "They locked the fridge," she said. Mia blinked. "What?" "And the cabinets, and now the laundry. Apparently I'm using too much of their detergent." Mia's mouth twisted into something between disgust and disbelief. "You bought that house with them, right?" "Helped with the down payment," Dorothy said. "Matt was just out of grad school. I signed on the loan." "And now you're on rations like it's prison?" Dorothy smiled softly. "Solitary confinement with a pillow-top mattress." Mia shook her head. "Dorothy, that's not care. That's containment." When she got back home, the air felt different, heavier. She opened her nightstand drawer to take her afternoon meds and froze. The pill organizer wasn't where she'd left it. She opened the next drawer, then the one after. Finally, she found it tucked into the bottom of her sock bin, flipped closed and rearranged. Pills missing, shifted into the wrong compartments. She stared at the plastic box for a long time. That night, after Matt came home, she asked casually, "Did you or Erin move my prescriptions?" He looked up from his phone. "She said you were forgetting doses. Just wanted to help organize." "I wasn't," Dorothy said, "and she didn't ask." Matt sighed, rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Mom, Erin's under a lot of pressure. Can we not make this into a betrayal?" Dorothy offered. "We don't have to. It already is." His silence was its own kind of answer. She turned and walked out before he could soften it with one of his non-answers. In her room, she pulled out her notebook. Day 45. Pills moved. Laundry locked. Heard myself called a ghost. I've become invisible in a house I helped build. She sat for a moment, tapping the pen against the paper. Then she reached for her phone. This time, she didn't Google. She dialed. "Law offices of Brenner and Gray." A voice answered. "Hi," Dorothy said, steady and soft. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. If I co-own a house, can I sell it without the other owners knowing?" There was a pause. Then, "That depends. Are you a full co-owner or majority title holder?" Dorothy glanced at the old envelope buried beneath her bills, the one marked with her husband's estate documents. "I might be more than they think." She hung up. No more questions tonight, only plans. The living room was quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock and the faint hum of the refrigerator Dorothy wasn't allowed to open. She sat at the dining table, documents spread like a tarot reading before her. The envelope from her late husband's estate lay open. Her name stared back at her from the deed, Dorothy Jean Archer, listed as 50% owner, inherited via survivorship clause after her husband's passing. Matt's name appeared beside hers, added years later when the refinancing was done. Not Erin's. Dorothy folded the paper with delicate precision, then placed it inside a fresh manila folder labeled in neat cursive, "House title, original plus copy." Downstairs, laughter echoed. Erin's voice, bright and brittle, floated up from the entryway. We have reservations at 7. Don't let me catch you in the kitchen, babe. I'm serious. Dorothy leaned over to glance out her bedroom window. Matt and Aaron were walking to the car, dressed like they were starring in someone else's romantic evening. Her son glanced up at the house once, eyes grazing past her window. No wave, no nod. Just a moment of maybe and then nothing. She waited until the headlights disappeared, then shuffled to the kitchen in her slippers. The padlock remained. The red latch gleamed like it enjoyed the restriction. She didn't touch it. Instead, she opened the drawer by the sink where she knew the expired crackers were. 2 sleeves left, salt-specked and crumbling. She took one, poured herself a glass of tap water, and sat alone at the table with her meal of defiance. The silence clung to her shoulders like a damp shawl. She ate slowly, methodically, 1 cracker at a time. Her eyes drifted to the corkboard on the wall, cluttered with coupons, appointment reminders, and a single photograph, Matt's first birthday, his hands covered in cake, her smile wide and exhausted, a homemade banner sagging behind them. She had baked that cake from scratch, hadn't had 2 nickels to rub together, so she'd used coupons and bartered babysitting hours for eggs and flour. She'd burned the first batch, cried in the kitchen, then started over, because Matt had deserved cake. She stood up suddenly, needing movement, purpose. She returned to her room and retrieved her notebook, flipping to the back where she'd taped a plastic zipper pouch. Inside, a thumb drive. She opened her laptop and plugged it in. New folder, kitchen surveillance, evidence. She opened her camera app. The grainy view of her desk flickered to life. She started recording. Her first entry was calm, measured. Today is day 46. Aaron and Matt went to dinner. I ate crackers from the drawer. I'm not sure they even remember I'm here unless I'm inconvenient. She clicked stop, saved the file, then opened her phone and began scrolling through texts. Aaron, can you not eat the last yogurt next time? That was for Matt. Aaron, also, please stop using the expensive detergent. We have cheaper stuff for your loads. Screenshot. Saved. She stood and took pictures of the locks on the fridge, the chain on the laundry cabinet, the handwritten note about our food. Later that night, she tiptoed to the hallway closet and opened a shoebox she'd quietly begun stashing. Receipts, printouts, timestamps, screenshots. Nothing illegal, just the truth in layers. When she returned to her room, she found a new brochure slipped under her door. It was glossy and blue, a cheerful photo of an elderly woman doing yoga on the cover. Finding the right care, exploring senior living options with dignity. The word dignity caught in her throat like a fishbone. She turned the pamphlet over, the clinic's logo, a sticky note attached. Just a thought. No pressure. M. Dorothy sat down slowly, brochure in her lap. Then she opened her notebook. Day 46. Crackers for dinner. Pamphlet for a future. This house is colder than it's ever been, and winter's just begun. She stared at the sticky note for a long moment, then crumpled it in her fist. Tomorrow she'd start cataloging everything. Because this wasn't just unkindness anymore, it was strategy. And now she had one too. The kitchen was empty, and Dorothy moved through it like a ghost with a mission. The padlocks were still in place, but the receipts weren't. She opened the junk drawer and began pulling out every crumpled slip of paper she could find. Grocery store stubs, appliance warranties, packing slips from online orders she hadn't even known Aaron had made in her name. Over the next hour, she filled a shoebox with dated proof of ownership. Bags of flour, light bulbs, a new crock pot. That damn decorative spice rack Aaron insisted made the kitchen more curated. Dorothy hadn't just contributed, she had built the rhythm of this household, and now she was a house guest to her own legacy. Back in her room, she started a spreadsheet. Inventory of contributions. Dorothy J. Archer. Each line detailed an item, cost, and date of purchase. She even included meals. When, what, and for how many people. A column labeled, Consumed by Others, grew longer than expected. Midway through the list, a shriek from downstairs interrupted her thoughts. Are you kidding me? You finished the orange juice again? Dorothy didn't flinch. She hit record on her phone, left it running on the desk. Erin's voice, sharp and unfiltered, climbed the staircase. I mean, it's not even funny anymore. You didn't pay for it. Why do you think it's okay to just use whatever you want? Dorothy waited until the yelling stopped. She stopped the recording and renamed the file. Audio number 3, Juice Meltdown. That evening, she called Mia. I need a favor, she said. Mia didn't hesitate. Name it. A realtor. Discreet. Someone who can keep a secret. By noon the next day, she had a name and a number. Mia had scribbled it on the back of a church bulletin with a smiley face beside it. Jenna, she said. You'll like her. She listens more than she talks. Dorothy smiled thinly. That would be a nice change. By Wednesday, she had scanned and backed up every deed, tax record, and warranty in her possession. 2 flash drives, one she hid inside an empty aspirin bottle in her purse, the other she slipped into a stack of hymnals at the church library. No one ever checked those. Then came the next test. At breakfast, she held her coffee mug with both hands and stared at Matt like she couldn't quite place him. You said I have a doctor's appointment this week? She asked. Matt glanced up, mildly concerned. No, Mom, not this week. Oh, she said, nodding. Right. Sorry, I must have mixed it up. He looked at her longer than usual, then returned to his phone. That afternoon, Erin brought up support options. You know, she said, biting into a protein bar, just in case the stairs start getting harder. Dorothy leaned into the moment, eyes unfocused. What day is it again? Erin gave a sympathetic noise and patted her arm like someone touching a cracked vase. See what I mean? Later, Dorothy added 2 more notes to her spreadsheet. Suspected attempt to suggest cognitive decline, verbal evidence. Stairs might get harder soon. That weekend, Dorothy walked into the kitchen just as Erin finished a call. We'll knock out the wall near the pantry. It'll open up the space. Think clean, modern lines, maybe quartz counters. Dorothy cleared her throat. Erin jumped. Oh, didn't see you there. Remodeling? Dorothy asked, voice neutral. Erin's face brightened falsely. Nothing set yet, just brainstorming. Dorothy smiled faintly. Of course. She walked out without another word, but inside her chest, something steady took hold. Erin had plans for her kitchen, her house, and she wasn't even pretending to ask anymore. That night, Dorothy printed out 2 copies of the updated inventory list. One went in the shoebox, the other folded into an envelope marked, in case of gaslighting. She placed it behind the framed photo of Matt's first day of kindergarten. Then, as she climbed into bed, her phone buzzed. A text from Jenna, the realtor. Would love to chat. Can meet anytime. Your schedule, your terms. Dorothy smiled into the darkness. Tomorrow, she'd set the terms. But tonight? Tonight she'd sleep knowing the locks might still be on the cabinets, but she was holding the key to the front door. The house had never looked more alive. Dorothy moved through each room like a museum curator before opening day. She straightened throw pillows, opened the blinds, and replaced Erin's cheap artificial flowers with a fresh mason jar bouquet from Mia's garden. In the hallway, she swapped out the dusty Live, Laugh, Love print for a framed watercolor of the beach she and Matt used to visit every summer, the one with the driftwood fences and sunburnt memories. By the time the doorbell rang, the house wasn't just ready, it was telling a story. One Erin hadn't written, one Matt had clearly forgotten. Dorothy opened the door. Jenna stood there in dark jeans, a navy blazer, and the kind of calm that didn't rattle easily. Her camera bag was slung over one shoulder, her smile warm but efficient. You ready? She asked. Dorothy nodded. Let's make this house shine before they come back. They moved fast. Jenna clicked through every angle. Living room, dining area, backyard, even the upstairs hallway. She complimented the natural light and the excellent bone structure of the space. Feels lived in but elegant, she said. You've clearly taken care of it. Dorothy didn't correct her. The truth was, she had. Every corner of that house bore her fingerprints, not Matt's, not Erin's, just hers, sanded, scrubbed, painted, held together through single-income storms and grief-stained years. While Jenna finished capturing the kitchen, minus the locked fridge and insultingly labeled pantry, Dorothy stepped into her bedroom and pulled the manila folder from its hiding place under her bed. Inside, the deed. She handed it over. Jenna scanned it, eyebrows lifting halfway through. "You're the majority owner?" Dorothy nodded. "My husband left me the down payment outright. I brought Matt in on refinancing years later, but my name never left the top line." "Then we're good to go," Jenna said, a touch more respect in her tone now. "Do you want to list today?" Dorothy hesitated, only for a breath. "List it." They signed the agreement at the dining table, using one of Dorothy's blue pens. She wrote with care, steady and precise. No shaking hands here. By the time they were done, it was 4:17 p.m. Matt and Aaron weren't due home until 5:30. Plenty of time. Jenna packed up and left with a parting nod. "I'll be in touch as soon as we get offers." As the door clicked shut behind her, Dorothy exhaled, slow and deep, like air hadn't moved through her lungs properly in weeks. Then she called Mia. 20 minutes later, they were parked outside a regional credit union 2 towns over. Dorothy walked in with her folder, her ID, and a face that didn't ask for approval. She opened a private account and transferred half of her remaining savings from the joint household fund into it. The other half she planned to move the moment the house sold. When the banker slid the new debit card across the desk, Dorothy stared at it like it was a trophy. It didn't say Mom. It didn't say Matt's cosigner. It said Dorothy Jean Archer, primary. On the drive home, Mia glanced over at her. "You okay?" Dorothy gave a crooked little smile. "I feel like I just bought myself out of a prison I didn't know I'd walked into." When they pulled into the driveway, Matt's car was already there. Dorothy's chest tightened, but Mia reached over and squeezed her hand. "You're not sneaking around anymore," she said. "You're reclaiming." Inside, Matt and Aaron were in the kitchen, mid-argument over a misdelivered package. Aaron was waving an Amazon receipt like a summons. They barely noticed Dorothy walk in. Perfect. That night, Dorothy climbed into bed and opened her notebook. Day 47, home staged, house listed, bank account opened, majority owner, majority voice. Aaron remodeled nothing. I remodeled my exit. She clicked off the lamp. Then she checked her email one last time. Jenna had sent over the online listing preview. Photos gleamed, rooms glowed, everything looked warm, loved even. She scrolled to the listing title, Charming 3-Bedroom with Character, History, and Grace. Dorothy stared at that line until her eyes watered. Then her phone buzzed. A new text. From Jenna. 3 showings booked already. 1 cash offer pending. More tomorrow. Dorothy smiled into the dark. They had locked the fridge. She had unlocked the future. The knock came just as Dorothy sat down with a cup of tea she hadn't been accused of stealing, because it was hers, bought with her own hidden debit card, brewed in her new personal kettle tucked beneath her bed like contraband. Matt's head poked into her room a moment later, polite but stiff. "Hey, Mom, we've got friends coming by for dinner. Can you, maybe, hang upstairs for a bit?" Dorothy took a sip. "Of course." He smiled, relieved. "Appreciate it. Just easier that way." Easier for whom, he didn't specify. She closed the door behind him, waited 10 minutes, then changed into her softest sweater and crept down the back stairwell. From the hallway she heard Aaron offering wine, over-explaining the kitchen layout like it was a museum exhibit. "We're thinking of knocking out this whole wall, open concepts just more modern." A woman's voice responded, friendly but curious. "And what year was the home built?" Dorothy stepped into view. 1956, she said gently. "The beams are original. So are the floors in the den. Pine heartwood, sanded twice but never replaced. Still creaks when the weather turns." Aaron nearly dropped her glass. "Oh," she said, face stretched into a smile. "Mom, I thought you were resting." Dorothy nodded. "Just stretching my legs." The guest, mid-40s, tidy blazer, sharp eyes, turned to her. "You must know this house inside and out." Dorothy gave her a soft, measured look. "I do." Every inch Matt appeared from the dining nook, smile tight. "This is Leona. She's an old friend from work. Just stopping by." Dorothy tilted her head slightly. "Nice of her to drop in during a seller's market." Leona laughed. You're sharp. Dorothy returned the smile, then turned to Matt and Aaron. Why don't I give Leona a quick tour upstairs? I'll be quiet. Matt hesitated, but Aaron, still rattled, nodded too quickly. Sure. Yes, go ahead. As they climbed the stairs, Leona leaned closer and whispered, That rug in the entry? Terrible choice. Dorothy grinned. They moved from room to room, Dorothy pointing out structural upgrades, hidden vents, the reinforced attic floor. When they reached the master bedroom, her bedroom, before she moved into what Aaron called the guest suite, she paused. I imagine you've already seen the listing. Leona nodded. And the deed. Impressive. Dorothy held her gaze. Then you know who you're really buying from. They didn't shake hands. But something passed between them, an understanding sealed in quiet. As they descended the stairs, Leona slowed at the kitchen. Would love one more peek at that pantry, she said. Dorothy opened the swinging door. The space was still locked with Aaron's red plastic latch, but a sliver of cracker lay on the floor just beyond it, barely visible under the cabinet. Aaron appeared behind them and gasped. Unbelievable! Mom, are you sneaking food again? Dorothy looked at the crumb, then calmly turned to Leona. I don't even like Ritz, she said. Leona hid a laugh. Matt muttered something about needing to check the grill. The tension hung thick as vinegar. Dorothy walked Leona to the door, reaching into her pocket. From the fold of her sweater, she pulled a tiny brass key attached to a yellow tag. This will open the lockbox. Jenna said you'd know when. Leona nodded, took it without a word, and slipped it into her coat. Once she was gone, Dorothy returned to her room. She made no mention of the crumb, no rebuttal, no argument, because she didn't need Aaron to know the truth. She only needed the buyer to. The next morning, her phone buzzed while she trimmed herbs on Mia's porch. Jenna's name lit up the screen. We've got 3 offers, 1 cash, all over asking. Dorothy didn't smile. She just slid the phone back into her jacket and added a sprig of rosemary to her tea. The kitchen wasn't unlocked, but it didn't need to be. Soon, it wouldn't be hers to walk through, or Aaron's to guard. The locks were temporary, the deed was not. The microphone in Dorothy's laptop crackled softly as she pressed record. Her voice came out calm, measured even, but something about the way she paused between sentences made the room feel smaller. This is for the record, she said, for anyone who thinks kindness only counts when it's documented in a birthday card or holiday casserole. She glanced at her notebook, page after page of small betrayals, tracked like weather patterns. I started counting the days when they started locking the cabinets, not because I needed the food, but because I needed to remember I was still keeping score. She clicked the track off, saved the file as Voice Log 1, Orange Juice Incident plus Deed Breakdown. Then she opened another. This house was my restart. I bought it with the money Charles left me when he passed. I brought Matt in later because he needed a leg up. I never expected the woman he married would try to treat me like an ungrateful tenant. She paused, cleared her throat. I raised that boy through sickness and rent hikes and PTA bake sales. I gave him everything but an apology for surviving it all. Save file, Voice Log 2, Contributions plus Co-Signer Myth. She spent the afternoon recording, editing, cataloging. By the time the sun tilted west, she had 6 audio files. The receipts didn't crinkle. They played. Later, she sat on her bed with a fountain pen and a piece of thick linen paper. She wrote a letter to Matt. It started with, I don't hate you, but I can't save you from the woman you married or from the version of me she convinced you to forget. She folded it gently, slid it into an envelope, didn't seal it. Not yet. The next day, Mia drove her to a financial advisor 2 towns over. They met in a small office above a florist, the windows smudged with dust and history. Dorothy placed the listing documents on the desk. I'd like the proceeds from the sale put into a trust, she said. Named beneficiary, myself. Secondary, contingent on my will. The advisor raised a brow. You expecting any legal pushback? Dorothy didn't blink. I'm expecting children. They scheduled the transfer for the day escrow closed. When she got back home, Erin was standing at the front window, chewing her thumbnail. People keep slowing down out front, she muttered. Like they're scoping the place out. Dorothy poured herself a glass of water. Maybe they like the color of the door. It's not the door, Erin snapped. It's weird. Dorothy sipped, nonchalant. It's a nice house. Must be the character. Erin's eyes narrowed, but she didn't press further. That night, Mia dropped off a manila envelope and 2 books. One was titled The Legal Steps of Tenant Removal. The other, Reclaiming Property Rights Without Losing Your Soul. You don't need to be mean, Mia said. You just need to be thorough. Dorothy flipped to the chapter on eviction timelines. She didn't like the word, but she liked even less what her life had become. When Erin went out shopping the next morning, no toddler, no Matt, just alone with her Pinterest boards, Dorothy got a call from Jenna. Buyers signed the last round. All we need is yours. Dorothy met her at the notary's office. The pen was too shiny, the paper too crisp, but her signature was steady. She signed each page slowly, one hand on the table, anchoring herself. When it was done, Jenna squeezed her arm. Congratulations, you just sold a house while your jailers thought they were in charge. Dorothy didn't laugh, but she smiled. She walked back to the car alone, pulled out her phone, checked the account, watched the pre-transfer balance appear. And then, she sealed the letter to Matt. At home, she tucked it into a shoebox beside the flash drive and her birth certificate. Downstairs, Erin was relabeling pantry bins. One read, Bulk Snacks, Family Only. Dorothy didn't say a word. Instead, she opened her notebook and wrote, Day 48, voice recorded. Papers signed. Offer closed. I used to hope he'd see me. Now I hope I never need him to. Then she slid the notebook shut as the doorbell rang. Erin shouted, Can you get that, Dorothy? Dorothy stood up slowly, not a servant, not a guest, just a woman holding the deed and the next chapter. The scream came just after sunrise. Dorothy was trimming basil on the back patio, her robe flapping in the wind, when Erin's shriek cracked across the yard like a snapped bone. What the hell is this? Dorothy didn't turn right away. She plucked a sprig, set it on a napkin, and stood with slow, deliberate grace. She walked around the side of the house just as Erin stormed across the lawn in slippers, hair wild, holding a sold sign like it was a murder weapon. This is a mistake, right? Erin shouted, shoving the stake toward Dorothy. Some kind of scam? A prank? You didn't actually sell the house? Dorothy raised her eyes, unflinching. Check the deed. Erin's mouth opened, then closed. Matt came out the front door, phone in hand, eyes flicking from the sign to the driveway like cameras might be watching. Mom, he said carefully. What's going on? I sold the house, Dorothy said. Legally. I'm the majority owner. Your name's on the refinance, not the purchase. Erin spun toward Matt. You told me. She's bluffing, he said, but his voice cracked halfway through. Dorothy took a step forward. You can remove the sign if you like, but the agency's already marked it in the MLS. Buyers will still arrive. And if you damage the sign, that's destruction of marketing property. Matt blinked. You're evicting us? Dorothy turned back toward the garden. Number the paperwork will do that. Inside, Erin ripped open the pantry and started tossing out anything she deemed hers. Protein bars, granola packets, even the oat milk Dorothy had long stopped drinking. You think this makes you powerful? She spat. You're a useless old hag. You can't even climb stairs without sounding like a winded corpse. Dorothy didn't respond. She walked inside calmly, picked up her purse, and retrieved a stamped envelope from the side pocket. She slid it into the outgoing mail tray. Matt stared at her like she was someone he didn't recognize. How long have you been planning this? Since the locks, she said. Since you decided convenience was worth more than dignity. Erin was now rifling through the junk drawer, looking for her credit card. She found it, stormed to her phone, and tried to order dinner. Declined. She froze, tried again, declined. Dorothy walked past her, cool as marble. That card is linked to the household joint account, the one I funded. I closed it yesterday. Matt's voice rose, panicked. You shut off our money? You shut off my food, she said. I figured fair was fair. Erin threw the credit card across the kitchen. It bounced off the fridge, landed near the baseboards. Mia texted. Dorothy checked it. County office confirmed. Eviction forms logged. Official notice should arrive in 3 to 5 business days. You're almost there. Dorothy deleted the text and walked upstairs, leaving them behind with their silence and simmer. She passed the hallway mirror and caught her reflection, chin lifted, eyes clear, posture tall. She looked nothing like a victim. Later that evening, she heard them whispering in the living room. Desperation had softened into something meaner, quieter, like a leak they didn't know how to plug. You should have just put her in a home, Erin hissed. She owns the damn house, Erin. Then contest it. With what money? Dorothy sat in her room, the door open. She didn't move. Let every word sink into the bones of the house that used to be hers. Then she opened her notebook and wrote, Day 49, sold sign up, signatures final, credit cards dead. I'm not the one locked out anymore. They are. Just as she closed the notebook, headlights swept across the wall. A car paused in front of the house. Another potential buyer. Erin looked out the window, face tight. They're still coming, she whispered. And they would, because Erin had built her fortress with locks. Dorothy had used blue ink, and ink, once signed, is harder to undo. The silence in the house wasn't peace. It was siege. Every door opened harder. Every glance lingered longer than it should have. Matt's footsteps grew heavier. Erin's tone more clipped. Even the toddler, normally a blur of motion, had begun to sense the tension, clinging to his stuffed frog like a life raft. Dorothy, meanwhile, was making oatmeal. For one. She stirred quietly, let it thicken without rush, then poured it into a blue ceramic bowl she'd bought years ago at a yard sale. She sat at the kitchen table, spoon in hand, eyes steady as Matt entered. He opened the fridge, found nothing. She'd stopped grocery shopping a week ago. Seriously? He muttered, slamming the door. You're just not feeding us now? Dorothy didn't respond. She took another bite, calm. From the hallway, Erin called out, Do we even have coffee anymore, or is that selfish too now? Dorothy rose, rinsed her bowl, and left the kitchen without a word. Upstairs, she pulled out the first of the moving boxes Mia had dropped off that morning, flattened it on the bed, unfolded, taped the seams with slow precision. Mia had helped carry them in with a nod and no small talk. They worked in silence, stacking boxes near the closet. Mia had offered her a ride to the post office. Dorothy had simply nodded. The house smelled faintly of cardboard and tension. She packed one box of sweaters, another of family photos, taped them shut, labeled them bedroom and keep. She paused at a shoebox near the back of her closet. Inside, letters from her late husband. Yellowed paper, smudged ink. One in particular still folded neatly, the corner bent from her thumb. I don't know what kind of world you'll face without me, it read, but I know this. You'll face it with your back straight and your chin up. Don't let anyone make you beg for the air in your own home. She didn't cry, just folded it again and placed it gently into the box marked private. Downstairs, Erin's voice rose like steam. I just think it's cruel. I mean, what kind of grandmother evicts her own family? What are we supposed to tell Liam? Dorothy kept folding. Erin appeared at her door a few minutes later, the toddler perched on her hip like a prop. He keeps asking why Grandma's leaving, she said, voice syrupy. You want to explain that to a 3-year-old? Dorothy turned from her box, looked at Liam, then at Erin. I think he's smart enough to understand boundaries, she said. You should try modeling one. Erin's smile cracked. You've changed. No, Dorothy said, picking up another box. I just stopped shrinking. The next morning, she went to the post office and mailed 4 letters, each one hand-addressed to people who had known her long before the word dependent started getting whispered behind her back. One to a friend from her PTA years in Sacramento. One to her old boss from the library. One to her sister, who hadn't spoken to her since the Thanksgiving fight in 2014, and one to a woman named Hazel who once taught Dorothy how to change a radiator hose on the side of I-5 with nothing but a butter knife and prayer. Each letter said the same thing in her best handwriting, moving to 1729 Sparrow Court. Come by for coffee anytime, pantry's always open. When she returned, Matt was sitting in the living room with the toddler, watching cartoons, not really watching. Erin paced the hallway like a lawyer waiting for a verdict. Dorothy passed through them like a breeze they couldn't catch. That evening she fried a single egg, buttered a single slice of toast, poured one glass of water, and ate by herself. They didn't speak. They just listened, to the sound of a woman who was no longer theirs. She opened her notebook one more time. Day 50, boxes packed, letters mailed, guilt weaponized. Funny how quiet it gets when control slips out of their hands. 4 days left, then the locks change for real. And just before she turned out the light, her phone buzzed. A message from Mia. They'll hate you for this, until they need to be you someday. Dorothy stared at the screen, then powered the phone off. Tomorrow she'd pack the kitchen, but tonight? Tonight she slept like a woman whose exit was now on schedule. The morning light spilled across the driveway like an announcement. 2 moving trucks pulled up at precisely 8 a.m., one labeled Crosswind Relocation, the other Sparrow Storage Solutions. Dorothy stood at the upstairs window with her tea, watching them idle like soldiers awaiting a signal. Downstairs, Matt stood barefoot in the foyer, his duffel bag sagging with half-folded clothes. Erin paced in the kitchen, her voice a rising buzz of disbelief as one of the movers politely asked if the pantry was accessible. "This is harassment," she snapped. "You don't just evict family." Dorothy came down the stairs slowly, her spine straight, her hair brushed and pinned. She wore a simple blue cardigan, the same one she'd worn when she first closed on the house 12 years ago, a quiet symmetry. "Erin," she said, calm as a Sunday hymn, "these gentlemen are here to help the new owners get settled." Matt looked up. "You said we had until noon." Dorothy held out a manila envelope. "Read the sale clause," she said. "It's in the 3rd paragraph. Final transfer of funds contingent upon full vacancy by non-title occupants. That includes both of you." Erin snatched the paper, her eyes darting. "You planned this," she hissed. Dorothy nodded. "Yes." A silver SUV rolled up behind the trucks, its windows gleaming. A woman in a crisp blouse stepped out, followed by a man balancing a toddler on one hip and a houseplant on the other. The family smiled when they saw the porch. The wife's face lit up. "Is this it?" Dorothy walked to the edge of the driveway. "Yes," she said. "It's yours now." Erin stomped out after her. "You can't just— Wait, they're moving in today?" "They're already on the deed," Dorothy replied. "And your things aren't." The husband handed the plant to his wife and extended his free hand to Dorothy. "Thank you. We've been dreaming of a place like this." Dorothy shook his hand firmly, then turned and offered the keys with a smile. Not performative, not petty, just clean, earned. Across the lawn, Erin was yelling again, this time at a mover who dared unplug her standing mixer. One of the moving coordinators calmly showed her a clipboard with signatures. She tried to argue, but the clipboard won. Within 10 minutes, she'd been escorted down the walkway by a local officer standing watch for disruptions during transition. It wasn't dramatic. It was procedure. Matt didn't fight. He just stood by the mailbox, watching his toddler in the new family's arms, looking like someone who'd misplaced the one thing he thought was permanent. Dorothy didn't gloat. She simply turned to the officer, nodded once, and walked back toward her car where Mia waited. Top down, champagne chilling in the cup holder. "You good?" Mia asked. Dorothy took one last look at the house, not through the lens of loss, but like a sculptor stepping back from her finished piece. "Better than good." She slid into the passenger seat as Jenna approached, holding her clipboard, her eyes misty. "You really did it," the realtor whispered. "You did this with class." Dorothy leaned over, signed the last form with her signature steady as stone. "No one saw it coming," she said. "That's what class is for." Mia popped the cork. The sound was crisp, clean, a punctuation mark. "Here's to kitchens without locks," she said, pouring into paper cups. Dorothy lifted hers. "And pantries without paranoia." They clinked. Behind them, the new family moved through the front door, laughter already echoing into a house that finally sounded like home again. As they pulled away from the curb, Dorothy reached into her purse and pulled out her notebook one last time. Day 51. Keys passed, house cleared, voices raised, but not mine. They treated me like a leftover. I became the recipe. And I chose who to feed next. She closed the cover gently, then dropped it in the glove box. Mia turned the radio up. The breeze caught their hair. And somewhere behind them, locks clicked into new hands. But none of them belonged to Erin. The new condo smelled like lemon oil and peace. Dorothy stood in the entryway, keys in hand, the welcome mat freshly laid beneath her orthopedic shoes. No padlocks, no baby latches, no fridge notes in passive-aggressive Sharpie. Just light filtering through soft shears and the view she'd chosen. A line of tall trees and a distant park where strangers walked their dogs in easy silence. She closed the door behind her and locked it. Not to keep people out, she thought. To remind myself this is mine. The first night, she unpacked a single box. Books. Each one touched like a friend she hadn't seen in years. She shelved them alphabetically, gently. Then she opened her laptop and began a fresh document. Title: 51 Days. Surviving the Kindness That Kills. She didn't write much yet. Just the epigraph. Survival isn't the absence of harm. It's the presence of choice. The next day, she walked 2 blocks to the public library, where a handwritten sign on the corkboard read, Thursday, Writer's Circle, all welcome. Bring voice, not ego. She smiled. By Friday, she was sitting in a folding chair with a compostable cup of tea, reading her first few pages aloud. No one interrupted. No one patronized her. One woman cried softly behind thick glasses. Please finish this book, she whispered. I need it. The group applauded. Not because she was old, not because she was tragic, but because the sentences sang. That night, her phone buzzed. Mia had texted, Erin's posting rants on Nextdoor. She called you a manipulative, abandonment-prone freeloader. Dorothy raised an eyebrow, then checked her email. An old friend from her church choir, Sister Anne, had seen Erin's post, too. But she'd also seen something else. Attached was a link to Dorothy's video journal, Voice Log 3, The Pantry and the Promise, a clip that Jenna had helped her edit and quietly post, her calm voice recounting the portion control excuse, the cracked smile, the forgotten respect. It had gone viral overnight. Comments flooded in. This is my mother's story, too. I didn't know how to name what was happening to me. Thank you, locked cabinets. My God, I thought I was alone. Dorothy closed the laptop gently, overwhelmed, not with noise, but with recognition. That Sunday, her old church community came in waves, casseroles in hand, coats unzipped. They hugged her like time hadn't passed. You look 10 years younger, someone whispered. Peace does that, she said. The following week, the community center called. They were hosting a series on resilience after retirement. Would Dorothy consider being a guest speaker? She hesitated, then said yes. The folding chairs were full that Thursday. Dorothy stood in slacks and her blue cardigan, microphone clipped gently to her collar. Boundaries, she began, aren't walls. They're doors. You decide who gets a key. She didn't cry, but others did. A woman in the back stood up and said, My daughter hasn't called in a year. I thought it was my fault. It probably wasn't, Dorothy said, but either way, you don't owe anyone your silence. They applauded. Later that evening, she returned home to find a cream-colored envelope in her mailbox. No return address. Inside, a thank you card. Dear Ms. Archer, we're settling in well. The creaky floors you mentioned are charming. Our daughter loves the backyard, and my husband keeps talking about the pantry space like it's sacred. Thank you for trusting us with your home. You didn't just sell a house. You handed us a safe place to begin again. With gratitude, the Halsteads. Dorothy stared at the words for a long moment, then walked to her kitchen, brewed herself a single cup of mint tea, and stood barefoot by the window. The moon was rising. Her new locks were solid brass. The kind you chose, not the kind forced on you. And this time the only thing sealed shut was her past. The envelope was thin and mean. Dorothy found it wedged in her mailbox on a Tuesday, its return address typed in block letters. Superior Court of Sonoma County. Inside, a notice of civil action, filed by Matthew R. Archer. Allegation, fraudulent conveyance of property. Dorothy read the words without surprise. Her tea went cold in her hand. Matt wasn't coming to make peace. He was coming to make noise. She didn't cry. She didn't call Mia. She simply picked up her phone and dialed Brenner and Gray. Her attorney, Mr. Daly, was already familiar. He'd filed the deed transfer, reviewed the trust, overseen every signature. When she handed him the lawsuit, he chuckled softly. "They're alleging you sold a house you didn't own?" "Apparently," Dorothy said. Daly patted the folder beside him. "Let's take it apart, piece by piece." The court date came 2 weeks later. A gray, overcast morning. Dorothy wore the same blue cardigan, like armor now. Matt sat across the aisle, his suit a little too new, his expression brittle. He didn't look at her. That was fine. She wasn't there to plead. She was there to close. The judge flipped through the paperwork with growing impatience. "Mr. Archer, your name does not appear on the original title. You were added during a refinance. Your mother retains full survivorship rights. The sale required no consent from you and violated no statute." Matt tried to interrupt, something about coercion, confusion, mental decline, but Daly simply handed over a printed transcript of Dorothy's TED-style talk, a notarized doctor's evaluation, audio recordings, the notarized video clip from Jenna's archives. "And here," Daly said, calm as a pond, "is the clause in the trust declaring the funds locked under private beneficiary designation, with explicit protections against familial legal interference." The judge didn't even look up. "Case dismissed. Plaintiff is advised not to waste this court's time again." Matt stood for a moment too long. Dorothy met his eyes. There was no triumph in hers, only clarity. She left the courtroom without a backward glance. That night, she attended a fundraiser potluck at the rec center. She brought her rosemary biscuits, the ones her husband used to request when things felt too heavy. A local nonprofit was organizing a new food pantry for low-income seniors. When they announced a $5,000 shortfall, Dorothy stood quietly and raised her hand. "I can cover that," she said, "with one condition." The room stilled. No locks on the cupboards, ever. The organizer blinked, then nodded. Deal. The applause was warm, earnest, real. Afterward, she sat at a folding table with a styrofoam plate and a stranger's pasta salad. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Dorothy?" a voice said. "It's Clara." Her sister. The one she hadn't spoken to in over a decade. Not since the argument about inheritance, about boundaries, about taking too much space. "I saw your video," Clara said. I didn't know. I didn't know." Dorothy's throat tightened. "It's okay." "No," Clara said, "but maybe now it can be." They talked for an hour, about their mother's recipes, about how their father used to whistle before he was angry, about how they were too old now to pretend they hadn't both made mistakes. When the call ended, Dorothy didn't cry, but she wrote Clara's name at the top of a blank page in her notebook. Possible visit, fall. She placed it under her fridge magnet, a reminder that not all doors stayed locked forever. 2 days later, Daly sent her confirmation. Trust secured. Irrevocable clause activated. All future family claims legally barred. Dorothy looked at the email, then stood at her window. Watched an elderly man walk by with his grandson. She reached into her cupboard and pulled out a tin of loose-leaf tea. A second mug, just in case. The fridge in Dorothy's condo stood nearly empty. Not out of poverty, out of choice. A half carton of eggs, fresh berries in a bowl, creamer for the coffee she made just the way she liked it, no measuring spoons, no labels, no lock clicking shut behind her. She opened the door that morning, stared at the cool, white glow, and thought, this used to be a battlefield. In that old house, food had meant permission, approval, control. Erin's voice, echoing from across the kitchen, "Did you eat the last yogurt?" was still a bruise on her memory. Dorothy closed the fridge gently and turned to the counter where a mixing bowl waited. Today, she was baking. The Halsteads had invited her over for coffee that Sunday. Their little girl had sent a hand-drawn invitation, crayon scribbles of cookies and smiling stick figures. She began with brown sugar and butter, creamed them until they were soft and forgiving. Added flour, chocolate chips, a touch of salt. The smell drifted through the apartment like a kind of prayer. By noon, she was walking up the same driveway she'd once paced in quiet fury. The house looked different now, flower beds weeded, a new wind chime on the porch, laughter drifting from an open window. The door swung open before she could knock. "Miss Dorothy!" the little girl shouted, barreling into her legs. Dorothy bent slightly, offering the cookie tin. "I made something sweet." The girl beamed. "Daddy says you used to live here? Is that real?" Dorothy smiled. "It is." "Then you're like history." The parents laughed from the doorway. The mother stepped forward. "We're so glad you came. Please come in." The walls were painted a lighter shade now, but Dorothy could still see the outline of her old photo frames in the drywall. They sat at the kitchen table, her table once, now theirs. The girl reached for a cookie and chirped, "These are Grandma Dot's cookies." Dorothy froze just for a second. Grandma Dot. It wasn't a title she'd expected to wear again, but in that moment it didn't ache. It felt healed. They chatted for an hour, swapped garden tips, shared stories. She left before overstaying, waving from the front lawn as the little girl shouted, "Bye, Grandma Dot," through the screen door. That afternoon, Dorothy drove to the edge of Sonoma County, to a bluff she hadn't visited in years. She parked beneath a twisted cypress tree and climbed the small hill with the last plastic tub from her storage unit in hand. Inside, a leather photo album wrapped in a faded blue ribbon. She sat on a picnic bench overlooking the cliffs and untied it slowly. There he was, Charles, smiling at her over pancakes in '81, holding Matt with one arm and a wrench in the other. Kissing her forehead at a high school graduation neither of them thought they could afford to attend. The final photo was from a beach vacation they'd scrimped to take, both of them barefoot, standing on driftwood. A moment before, cancer unspooled everything. Dorothy traced the photo with one finger, then looked out toward the water. It had been 15 years since she'd scattered his ashes in this spot, wind biting her face, the future collapsing like a sandcastle. Now she sat stronger. Still weathered, yes, but rooted. She closed the album, wrapped it again, and placed it gently back into the bin. No more storage units. No more waiting rooms in her own life. As she stood, her phone buzzed. A text from Mia. "Guess who just RSVP'd to the Elder Rights Conference? Matthew. Signed up as supporting family member." Dorothy didn't know what that meant yet. A gesture? A stunt? A seed of something too late? But she didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, she wrote one final note in her journal. Day 61. Cookies shared, fridge open, wind steady. I'm no longer living inside a locked cabinet. I'm living inside my own name. She tucked the journal away, then turned back toward the car, the sun at her back, the sea no longer something she needed to fight. The park bench was damp from the morning fog, but Erin didn't seem to notice. She sat rigid, arms crossed, legs bouncing, her hoodie zipped to the throat like she could zip the world out. Dorothy approached slowly, the list folded in her purse like a final draft. Erin looked up, eyes bloodshot but dry. No tears, just exhaustion, and pride clinging to its last thread. "You came," she muttered, like it was a betrayal. Dorothy didn't sit, just looked down at the woman who had once patted her arm like a cracked teacup. "You texted," Dorothy said. Erin exhaled hard. "Matt left." Silence. "He's staying with some coworker. Says he needs space. Said I broke things beyond fixing." She let out a short laugh, brittle as crushed ice. "Can you believe that?" Dorothy said nothing. "I have Liam. No savings. No job right now. Not even a car that's fully paid off. Everything was in the joint name." She looked up, her voice smaller now. "I don't know where to go." Dorothy finally sat, on the edge of the bench, back straight. "I thought maybe—" Erin hesitated. "Maybe just until I find a place. You have a spare room, right?" The audacity didn't shock Dorothy. It just confirmed what she'd always known. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded paper. A list, typed. Shelters, transitional housing centers, childcare programs, a church pantry that didn't ask for identification. Erin looked at it like it was an eviction notice. "This is what you brought me?" she said. Dorothy nodded. These are places that help women start over. Erin shook her head, stunned. You're actually turning me away? I'm not a lockbox anymore, Dorothy said. I didn't change the locks to keep you out. I changed them to finally let myself in. Erin's face twisted. You're heartless. Dorothy let the word hang in the air. No, she said. I'm finally whole. The wind rustled the oak trees above them. A family passed nearby, 2 parents, a stroller, a dog trotting beside them, leash slack and easy. Dorothy watched them a moment, then turned back to Erin. I'm not here to punish you, she said, but I won't cushion you either. Erin looked at the list again. You really think this makes you better than me? No, Dorothy said. I think it makes me free. She stood, brushed off her pants. The ground was soft, forgiving. I suggest you call the shelter on Westland. They have room for single mothers. She walked a few steps, then paused. You'll be okay, she said. Eventually. Erin didn't respond. Dorothy didn't expect her to. She walked back to the car, the path lined with pale pebbles and gold leaves. The door clicked shut behind her. As she pulled away, she caught a flash of Erin in the rearview mirror, still on the bench, smaller now, not humbled, but hollowed. The kind of emptiness you earn by digging through other people's boundaries for too long. Dorothy didn't feel triumphant. She felt clean. Later, in her condo, she opened her notebook and wrote, Day 66. She called me heartless. But it was never my heart I needed to protect. It was the part of me that always handed it over too quickly. No more. She closed the book and opened the kitchen window. The scent of rosemary drifted in from the community planter box. That evening, she made soup. For one. That night, she sat on her balcony with a blanket and an old photo of Charles tucked into her lap. Her mind wandered to a moment from years ago. Charles in their first fixer-upper, standing by the front door after a long day of drywall and arguments about cabinet paint. He had said something then, casual and low, just before the kettle whistled. Don't let people guilt you out of your own home, Dottie. They'll never stop if you let them start. Back then, it hadn't felt prophetic. It was just one of those things people say when life is heavy and hope is a little thin. Now it echoed like scripture. She looked up at the stars, each one quietly burning in its place. And somewhere across town, Erin would have to knock on a door she didn't own, because Dorothy wasn't opening hers again. Dorothy woke to sunlight, not the weak kind that filtered through heavy blinds and guilt-thick mornings, but full-bodied warmth, honest, uncomplicated. It spilled through the linen curtains, dust motes swirling like dancers. The condo was quiet, except for the soft hum of her kettle and the stretch of her own limbs. She didn't rush. She didn't ask permission. She made bacon. Real bacon, crackling in the cast-iron pan, curling at the edges like pages of an old book. She toasted sourdough, fried 2 eggs the way Charles had liked them, runny yolk, crisp edges. When the butter melted on the toast, she smiled. This wasn't survival. This was her life now. Mia arrived at 9:30 sharp with her ridiculous leopard print thermos and a bag of strawberries. Dorothy handed her a slice of toast. Fresh, she said. Mia took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. This is what revolution tastes like. They laughed until they cried. The doorbell rang at noon. Mail. A padded envelope from the editorial office of American Current with a crisp note. We're proud to publish your essay Locked Out and Let In next month's issue. You've given voice to the invisible. Inside, a proof copy, her name printed clean beneath the title. The layout was elegant. A single quote in bold at the top. They didn't starve me. They tried to erase me. I learned to feed myself instead. Dorothy held it for a long time. Not reverently, just truly. Later that day, another envelope arrived, smaller, local return address, a note from the Sonoma Community Relief Fund. In recognition of your contributions to senior hunger relief and dignity-based aid, we are proud to name you this year's recipient of Quiet Service. Inside, a tiny glass plaque. No gold, no pretense, just her name, and the word, Restorer. Dorothy placed it on the bookshelf between The Joy of Cooking and The Gift of Fear. That afternoon, she returned to the pantry center, the one she'd helped fund, furnish, and unlock. It buzzed with quiet life. An elderly man choosing cereal without scrutiny, a teenage girl folding paper bags into neat stacks. No keypads, no locked glass, just rows of food. Trust in motion. She sat near the back on a worn blue bench and watched. A young boy, no older than 6, reached for a box of mac and cheese. He grinned when his mother nodded. His hand was small, chubby, full of certainty. Dorothy stood, walked over, crouched down beside him. "Good choice," she said softly. "That was my grandson's favorite, too." The boy looked up. "I like it with hot dogs." "Smart," Dorothy whispered, touching the edge of the shelf. "You know what you like? That's a good thing." He gave her a look only children can give. Complete trust, unfiltered. Then turned and walked toward his mom, prize in hand. Dorothy stayed kneeling a moment longer. This pantry didn't look like hers had. It wasn't about surveillance, control, or punishment. It was about options, dignity. Enough. She straightened, brushed her hands off on her slacks, and made her way to the door. As she left, one of the volunteers handed her a small card, a thank you. On the back, written in thick Sharpie, were 4 words, "Because of you, full today." Outside, the late afternoon sun slid low behind the hills. She paused on the sidewalk, tilted her face toward the light, closed her eyes. No one was yelling, no one was rationing, no one was waiting for her to shrink. She opened her purse and slid the card inside, next to her notebook. The last page had already been written. She had nothing left to log, but everything left to live. As she crossed the street, a little girl on a scooter passed by and waved. Dorothy waved back. Her steps were steady, her breath unhurried. She reached her condo, unlocked the door, closed it behind her, and flipped on the kitchen light. They locked me out, so I unlocked the rest of my life.